In the lavish Westfield estate, a federal judge was about to discover her family's darkest secret. What started as a sister's engagement celebration took a shocking turn when they came face to face with an FBI investigation. Kate Matthew wasn't your typical party guest. For 2 years, she had served on the federal bench, known for her unwavering commitment to justice. When she encountered her family's money laundering operation disguised as wedding festivities, she had no idea she was walking into a federal sting. Kate's cooperation with Agent Torres would lead to devastating consequences. What began as feeling excluded from introductions would become choosing between family loyalty and legal duty. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Kate Matthews' BMW pulled into the circular driveway of the Chen family estate, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The Westfield mansion loomed before her, all glass and stone, a testament to her parents' success in America. Soft lights spilled from the windows, casting geometric patterns across the manicured lawn where string lights had been hung between ancient oak trees. It looked perfect. It looked like home should look for a celebration. But something felt wrong. She sat for a moment, watching through her windshield as figures moved behind the illuminated windows. Her sister Sarah's engagement party was in full swing, and Kate was already late. The federal court's emergency session had run longer than expected, another case involving financial fraud that had kept her reviewing evidence until nearly 7. She'd changed in her chambers, trading her judicial robes for a simple black dress, but she still felt the weight of the courtroom on her shoulders. Kate stepped out of her car, her heels clicking against the flagstone path. The sound of laughter and conversation drifted from the house, punctuated by the gentle notes of a string quartet. Everything appeared exactly as it should for Sarah's engagement to David Wong: elegant, expensive, celebratory. Yet Kate's judicial instincts, honed by years of reading between lines and catching inconsistencies in testimony, whispered that something was off. The front door opened before she could knock. Michael stood there, her older brother looking handsome in his tailored suit, but his smile seemed strained around the edges. "Katie," he said, using her childhood nickname, "you made it." "Traffic was murder," she lied, accepting his brief hug. The real delay had been her reluctance to come at all. Family gatherings had become increasingly uncomfortable since her appointment to the federal bench 2 years ago. Success, she'd learned, could be its own form of isolation. Michael's eyes darted toward the living room, then back to her face. "Sarah will be so glad you're here." The words carried an odd emphasis that made Kate study her brother's expression more carefully. Before she could analyze it further, he was guiding her into the house, his hand on her elbow with just enough pressure to suggest urgency. The interior buzzed with conversation and movement. Kate recognized some faces: distant relatives, family friends, neighbors from the old days when the Chens had lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Chinatown. But there were others she didn't recognize, men in expensive suits who carried themselves with a particular kind of confidence. Their conversations ceased momentarily as she passed, eyes following her progress through the room. "Judge Matthew," someone called out, and Kate turned to see Mrs. Kim from her mother's mahjong group approaching with a broad smile. "So proud of you, dear. Your parents must be beside themselves with joy." Kate accepted the compliment with practiced grace, but noticed how quickly Mrs. Kim's gaze moved away, as if prolonged eye contact made her uncomfortable. It was a small thing, but in Kate's experience, small things often revealed larger truths. Her father appeared at her side, Henry Chen, looking distinguished in his navy blazer. At 65, he still cut an impressive figure, the successful immigrant businessman who had built an empire from nothing. His import/export company had grown steadily over the years, allowing him to move the family from Chinatown to Westfield, to send all 3 children to private schools, to build this monument to the American dream. "My daughter," he said, his accent still faintly coloring his English despite 4 decades in the country. "The judge." There was pride in his voice, but also something else, a tension Kate couldn't quite identify. He kissed her cheek, but his embrace felt perfunctory, as if performed for an audience. "Where's Sarah?" Kate asked. I should congratulate her. Her father's eyes flickered toward the conservatory. She's greeting guests. Important guests. Perhaps you should wait. The phrasing struck Kate as odd. In her family, no guest was too important for family introductions. But before she could pursue the thought, her attention was caught by a commotion near the gift table. A young man was carrying what appeared to be a heavy briefcase, setting it down among the wrapped presents with careful deliberation. The briefcase looked expensive, leather-bound with brass fittings, but it seemed an odd engagement gift. Kate watched as he opened it briefly, revealing what looked like documents rather than the usual crystal or china. Another man joined him, and they spoke in low, urgent tones before the first man closed the case and walked away. Kate's prosecutorial mind began cataloging details automatically. The briefcase bearer wore a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His companion kept glancing toward the doors, scanning faces in a way that suggested either security training or habitual wariness. Neither man looked like typical wedding guests. "Kate!" Sarah's voice rang out across the room, bright and theatrical. "You're here!" Her sister approached with arms outstretched, radiant in a cream-colored cocktail dress that probably cost more than Kate's monthly mortgage payment. Sarah had always been beautiful, but tonight she seemed almost luminous, though Kate noticed the slight tightness around her eyes that suggested the smile was requiring effort. They embraced, and Sarah whispered in her ear, "You look tired. Court keeping you busy?" "When isn't it?" Kate replied, but something in her sister's tone made her pull back to study Sarah's face. "You look beautiful. This is quite a party." "David spared no expense," Sarah said, her voice carrying an odd note. "He wants everything to be perfect." Kate looked around the room again. "Where is the lucky man? I should meet him properly." Sarah's hesitation lasted only a fraction of a second, but Kate caught it. "He's meeting with some business associates. You know how it is." Kate didn't know how it was. In her experience, grooms at engagement parties focused on their brides, not business meetings. But Sarah was already moving away, claiming she needed to check on the catering. Left alone, Kate moved toward the conservatory, drawn by the sound of male voices speaking in what she recognized as Mandarin. Through the glass doors, she could see her parents in conversation with several of the unfamiliar men. Her mother, Linda, was taking notes in a small leather book, her pen moving with quick, efficient strokes. The scene looked more like a business meeting than party planning. Kate's Mandarin was rusty. She'd rebelled against weekend Chinese school as a teenager. But she caught fragments, numbers, dates, something about transfers and schedules. Her father's voice carried authority, the tone of a man accustomed to giving orders rather than asking questions. A memory surfaced, Kate at 16, overhearing a similar conversation in her father's study. She'd asked him about it later, and he'd dismissed it as boring business talk, negotiations with suppliers in Taiwan. She'd accepted the explanation then, but now, with years of legal training behind her, the conversation sounded different. More urgent. More secretive. Quite a gathering, isn't it? Kate turned to find a woman standing beside her, mid-40s, Hispanic, with intelligent eyes and the kind of understated confidence that suggested law enforcement. She was dressed appropriately for the party, but something about her posture, the way she held herself slightly apart from the other guests, set off Kate's internal alarms. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've met," Kate said carefully. "Rebecca Torres," the woman replied, extending her hand. "Friend of David's family." The handshake was firm, professional. Kate noticed the woman's eyes cataloging details: Kate's dress, her jewelry, the way she carried herself. It was the kind of assessment Kate had seen countless times in her courtroom, the look of someone gathering evidence. "And you're Judge Matthew," Torres continued. "Sarah's mentioned you often." Has she? Kate kept her voice neutral, but internally she was processing. Sarah had never mentioned anyone named Rebecca Torres. And something about the way this woman said Judge Matthew, with a kind of weighted recognition, suggested she knew more about Kate than casual party conversation would warrant. Torres smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. David's business brings him into contact with many different types of people: lawyers, judges, government officials. He believes in maintaining good relationships with the legal community. The phrasing was careful, almost scripted. Kate felt the familiar sensation she experienced in court when a witness was being deliberately evasive, the sense that important information was being withheld. Before she could respond, the lights dimmed slightly and her father's voice cut through the conversation. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention." The crowd gathered in the main living room, champagne glasses raised expectantly. Kate found herself pushed toward the back of the group, behind several of the unfamiliar men, whose bulk blocked her view of the impromptu stage area near the fireplace. Her father began speaking, his voice warm with paternal pride as he welcomed everyone to celebrate Sarah and David's engagement. He introduced various family members, thanking relatives and friends for their attendance. Kate waited for her introduction, prepared to acknowledge the crowd's attention with a modest wave. But it never came. Her father moved through the list of family members: Michael, various aunts and uncles, even distant cousins, but skipped over Kate entirely. The omission felt deliberate, calculated. In a room full of people who knew she was Henry Chen's daughter, the federal judge, her absence from the introductions was conspicuous. Kate felt heat rise in her cheeks, a combination of embarrassment and growing anger. She caught Michael's eye across the room, and he looked away quickly, his expression troubled. Sarah stood beside their father, her smile never wavering, but she didn't meet Kate's gaze either. The formal introduction continued with various business associates and family friends. Kate recognized the pattern now. Her father was introducing people by their usefulness to his business, their connections, their value to the network he'd built. It was a display of influence and reach, disguised as family celebration. When David Wong finally appeared, Kate understood why Sarah had seemed evasive. David was undeniably handsome, tall, well-dressed, with the kind of polished charm that came from expensive education and careful cultivation. But his smile was practiced, his gestures calculated for maximum effect. When he spoke about his love for Sarah, the words sounded rehearsed. Kate watched the crowd's reaction to David's speech. The family friends applauded politely, but it was the unfamiliar men who responded with real enthusiasm. These weren't wedding guests, Kate realized. They were business associates, partners in whatever enterprise David represented. As the formal presentations concluded and conversation resumed, Kate made her way toward the kitchen, needing a moment to process what she'd observed. The exclusion from introductions stung, but more troubling was the growing certainty that Sarah's engagement party was serving a purpose beyond celebration. In the kitchen, she found her mother directing the catering staff with military precision. Linda Chen looked up as Kate entered, her expression guarded. "Katie, dear, you should be with the guests." "Should I?" Kate asked. "I wasn't exactly featured in the introductions." Her mother's hands stilled on the serving tray she'd been arranging. "Your father, he didn't want to put pressure on you. You work so hard, such important cases. He thought you might prefer to simply enjoy the party." The explanation sounded reasonable, but Kate's experience, reading witnesses, told her it was practiced, prepared in advance. Her mother was lying, and not very well. "Mom, what's really going on here? Who are all those men I don't recognize? And why does Sarah's fiancé look like he's conducting business meetings instead of celebrating his engagement?" Linda Chen's composure cracked slightly. "Katie, some things are better left alone. You have your career, your important work. You don't need to worry about family business." The phrase family business carried weight Kate had never noticed before. Not the family's business, but family business. Something specific, something separate from Henry Chen's legitimate import company. Kate was about to press further when Agent Torres appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Excuse me," Torres said, her voice carrying unmistakable authority. "Judge Matthew, could I speak with you privately? About a matter concerning the court." Linda Chen went very still, her face pale. Kate looked between her mother and the woman who claimed to be David's family friend, and realized that whatever was happening here went far beyond sibling rivalry or wedding planning stress. "Of course," Kate said, following Torres toward the garden doors. As they stepped outside into the cool evening air, Kate noticed Torres's hand moving to her jacket in a gesture she recognized from security training. The woman's demeanor had shifted from party guest to something much more professional, more official. Kate's judicial instincts, already alert, now screamed warnings. The expensive gifts that looked like financial transfers, the unfamiliar men with their careful surveillance of the room, her family's nervous behavior around her. And now a woman who claimed to be a family friend but carried herself like federal law enforcement. Who are you really? Kate asked as they reached the relative privacy of the garden. Torres turned to face her, and in the moonlight her expression was grave. Judge Matthew, she said, her voice carrying the weight of official authority, we need to talk about your family. And we need to talk about you. The party continued behind them, laughter and conversation drifting through the open windows. But Kate suddenly felt very far away from the celebration, as if she were standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss she'd never known existed. The woman reached into her jacket and withdrew a leather credentials case. FBI. Kate's blood ran cold as Torres spoke again. We've been watching your family for some time, Judge Matthew, and now we need your help. Because whether you know it or not, you're part of this. You've been part of it all along. The string quartet played on, the champagne flowed, and Sarah's engagement party continued its elegant charade. But Kate Matthew, federal judge and youngest daughter of the Chen family, stood in the garden and realized that everything she believed about her life, her success, and her family was about to change forever. In the distance, she could see her father through the conservatory windows, still deep in conversation with men whose faces were hard, with the kind of calculation that had nothing to do with wedding celebrations. The briefcase sat among the engagement gifts, like a secret waiting to be revealed. And somewhere in the house, her sister Sarah was playing the role of happy bride, while her world, their world, balanced on the edge of exposure. The judge and Kate recognized evidence when she saw it. The daughter in her prayed she was wrong. Kate's heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at the FBI credentials in Rebecca Torres's hands. The gold shield caught the moonlight, its authenticity undeniable. Around them, the garden seemed to hold its breath. Even the string quartet's melody from inside felt muted, as if the world had shifted into a different frequency. FBI? Kate's voice came out steadier than she felt. Years of courtroom composure served her well, even as her internal world tilted off its axis. Torres closed the credential case with a soft snap. Special Agent Rebecca Torres, Financial Crimes Unit. We've been investigating your family's organization for 18 months, Judge Matthew. The words hit Kate like physical blows. Organization, not business. Organization. The kind of word federal prosecutors used when discussing criminal enterprises. There's been some mistake, Kate said automatically, the words feeling hollow even as she spoke them. But her judicial mind was already connecting dots she'd spent a lifetime avoiding. The expensive gifts that looked like financial transfers, her father's late-night meetings with men who didn't look like importers, the way conversations stopped when she entered rooms. I wish there was. Torres's voice carried genuine regret. Judge Matthew, your family has been running one of the most sophisticated money laundering operations on the East Coast. And whether you know it or not, your position has been integral to their success. Kate felt the ground shift beneath her feet. That's impossible. My judicial decisions are based solely on legal merit. I would never compromise. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We know you wouldn't, not knowingly. Torres's interruption was gentle but firm. That's what made you so valuable to them. Your reputation for integrity, your complete commitment to justice. It provided perfect cover. Who would suspect a federal judge's family of criminal activity when the judge herself was beyond reproach? The implication crashed over Kate like ice water. Every achievement she'd earned, every case she'd decided, every moment of pride in her judicial appointment, all of it tainted by association with criminal money. Her knees threatened to buckle. "My law school tuition," she whispered, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. "My student loans were paid off early. Dad said he'd gotten a bonus from a big contract. Laundered money from a drug trafficking ring operating out of Baltimore," Torres confirmed. $67,000. Filtered through your father's import company and presented as legitimate business income. Kate pressed her hand against the garden wall, needing something solid to anchor herself. "My appointment to the bench, the recommendation came from Senator Morrison. He's a family friend, he said Dad had mentioned my qualifications. Senator Morrison has been receiving campaign contributions from shell companies connected to your father's network for 8 years. Nothing direct enough to prosecute, but enough to ensure he remembered Henry Chen's daughter when judicial appointments came up." The revelation felt like drowning. Every moment of pride, every feeling of earned success, crumbling into ash. Kate's voice came out raw. "How long have you known?" "About me? We've been aware of your unwitting involvement for 6 months. But Judge Matthew, Kate, we need you to understand something crucial. You are not a target of this investigation. You're a victim." Kate laughed bitterly. "A victim who's been unknowingly legitimizing criminal activity for 2 years. A victim whose integrity made her valuable to criminals, yes. But your decisions from the bench have been clean. We've reviewed every case. Your father was smart enough never to directly involve you in anything actionable. He didn't need to. Your mere existence as his daughter, the federal judge, was enough." Torres stepped closer, her voice taking on urgency. "Tonight isn't just an engagement party, Kate. It's a cover for the largest financial transaction your father's organization has ever attempted. David Wong isn't just Sarah's fiancé. He's the son of Liu Wei Wong, who runs money laundering operations from Vancouver to Miami. This engagement is a business merger disguised as a family celebration." Kate's mind reeled. Sarah, her sister, who'd always resented Kate's achievements, who'd married young to escape the family's expectations, Sarah was part of this? "Those gifts being presented tonight," Torres continued, "they're not wedding presents. They're financial instruments, bonds, cryptocurrency wallets, offshore account information. We estimate $23 million in laundered funds are changing hands in your parents' living room right now." Kate thought of the briefcase she'd seen, the careful way it had been placed among the wrapped presents. "Sarah knows?" "Sarah was recruited by David Wong specifically because she was your sister. Her resentment toward your success made her an easy target for manipulation. She believes she's finally proving she can be as important to the family business as you are." The cruelty of it staggered Kate. Her sister's engagement, her happiness, all orchestrated to exploit family dynamics and provide cover for criminal activity. "What do you want from me?" Kate asked, though she already suspected the answer. "We want your help," Torres said simply. "We need someone on the inside, someone with access to the family's private conversations and movements, someone they trust enough to speak freely around. You want me to spy on my family? I want you to help us stop them before more people get hurt." Torres's voice carried sudden passion. "Kate, do you know what drug money does to communities? The violence it brings, the lives it destroys. Your father's organization has facilitated the distribution of heroin, fentanyl, cocaine, drugs that have killed hundreds of people." Kate closed her eyes, seeing the faces of drug cases she'd presided over. Young defendants, their lives destroyed by addiction. Grieving families seeking justice for overdose deaths. Had any of that money flowed through her father's network? "My brother," Torres continued, her voice growing quiet. "Miguel Torres, 22 years old, shot dead in a turf war between rival drug operations in Phoenix. The investigation traced the money funding both sides back to a laundering network that connected to your father's organization." Kate opened her eyes to find Torres's face etched with pain and determination. "I became an FBI agent to stop the people who killed Miguel. Your family didn't pull the trigger, but they made it possible. They cleaned the blood money that bought the guns." The weight of complicity settled on Kate's shoulders. Not legal complicity. She'd committed no crimes. But moral complicity. the burden of having benefited from suffering she'd never seen. "If I help you," Kate said slowly, "my family will go to prison. If you don't help us, more families will be destroyed by the drugs and violence your father's money enables." Kate looked through the conservatory windows at her parents, still deep in conversation with David Wong's associates. Her father looked distinguished, successful, the immigrant who'd achieved the American dream. Her mother appeared elegant, gracious, the perfect hostess welcoming guests to her daughter's celebration. But now Kate could see what she'd been trained not to notice: the careful positioning of conversations away from windows, the way certain guests avoided being photographed together, the subtle deference everyone showed to her father, not as a beloved patriarch, but as someone whose displeasure carried consequences. "What would I have to do?" Kate asked. "Wear a wire. Document conversations. Help us identify the key players and understand the money flows. Most importantly, we need evidence of tonight's transaction to make arrests that will stick." "Tonight? We move on this in the next 6 hours, or $23 million disappears into accounts we'll never trace. David Wong leaves for Vancouver tomorrow morning. If he gets on that plane with those financial instruments, this investigation dies." Kate felt the trap closing around her. Not Torres's trap, the trap her family had unknowingly built around her for years. Every moment of love, every family dinner, every proud phone call about her judicial appointment, all of it part of a web she'd never seen. "If I say yes," Kate said, "I lose my family forever. If you say no," Torres replied, "you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you could have stopped them and chose not to." Kate looked up at the stars, barely visible through Westfield's light pollution. Somewhere in the house behind her, Sarah was playing the happy bride. Michael was probably charming guests while keeping watch for anything suspicious. Her parents were conducting business that would fund more violence, more addiction, more death. And Kate Matthew, federal judge, had to choose between the family who'd raised her and the oath she'd sworn to uphold justice. "What do you need me to do?" she heard herself say. Torres's relief was visible. "First, we get you wired up. Then you go back to that party and help us gather evidence that will save lives." Kate nodded, though every instinct screamed against it. As Torres led her toward a van parked discreetly at the end of the street, Kate realized she was crossing a line she could never uncross. In the next few hours, she would either become the instrument of her family's destruction or an accomplice to their crimes. The choice, she understood now, had never really been hers to make. It had been made the moment her family decided her integrity was just another asset to exploit. The party continued without her, laughter and music spilling into the night. But Kate Matthew was no longer a guest at her sister's engagement. She was an undercover federal informant, about to destroy everything she'd ever loved, in service of everything she'd sworn to protect. The wire felt cold against Kate's skin as she adjusted her dress, the tiny microphone hidden beneath the fabric like a guilty secret. Torres had worked quickly, efficiently, the kind of practiced ease that spoke of countless similar operations. Now Kate stood at the garden door, watching her family through the glass, seeing them with eyes that had been forcibly opened. "Remember," Torres's voice came through the nearly invisible earpiece, "act natural. You're just returning from getting some air." Kate pushed through the door, stepping back into the warmth and light of the party. But everything looked different now. The elegant gathering transformed into a carefully orchestrated criminal enterprise. The string quartet still played, guests still laughed and raised champagne flutes. But Kate could see the underlying structure Torres had revealed. Her father stood near the fireplace, holding court with 3 men she didn't recognize. As Kate approached, she caught fragments of their conversation, not the social pleasantries of a wedding celebration, but the clinical language of financial transactions. "The Vancouver route clears customs more easily," one man was saying. "Fewer questions about art shipments." Her father nodded approvingly. "Michael has established the documentation. Everything appears legitimate." Kate felt her blood chill. Michael, her brother, was actively involved, not just present but participating. The brother who'd hugged her at the door, who'd seemed troubled by her exclusion from the introductions, was part of this network. Kate moved through the party like a ghost haunting her own life, the wire against her skin, a constant reminder of the deception she was now perpetrating. Every smile felt forced, every casual conversation a potential minefield. The earpiece crackled softly as Torres provided guidance from her surveillance position outside. Natural, Kate. You're just tired from court. Mingle, listen, but don't push for information. Kate approached the bar, needing something to do with her hands. The bartender, another unfamiliar face, poured her a glass of wine with practiced efficiency. As she turned away, she nearly collided with Michael. "You disappeared," he said, studying her face with concern that now felt loaded with new meaning. "Everything okay? Just needed some air," Kate replied, tasting the lie on her tongue. "It's been a long day in court." Michael's eyes searched hers, and for a terrifying moment Kate wondered if he could somehow sense the wire, the betrayal she was carrying. But he just nodded, his expression softening. "The Hendricks case," he said. "I saw it in the news. That couldn't have been easy." Kate blinked in surprise. The Hendricks case involved money laundering charges against a mid-level drug operation. She'd sentenced the defendants to significant prison terms just last week. How did Michael know the details? "You follow my cases?" she asked carefully. Something flickered across Michael's face, too quick to interpret, but Torres's voice whispered in her ear. "He's monitoring your judicial decisions." Pressed gently. "Dad likes to keep track," Michael said, his tone casual but his posture slightly tense. "He's proud of your work." "We all are." The word, track, sent ice through Kate's veins. Her family wasn't just proud. They were monitoring her cases, probably analyzing which ones might affect their operations. "That's sweet of him," Kate managed. "Though most of my cases are pretty routine, financial crimes, drug prosecutions. Nothing that would interest the import business." Michael's laugh sounded forced. "You'd be surprised. Dad's always saying how the legal system affects legitimate businesses too. Increased scrutiny, new regulations. Your insights help him stay compliant." Kate felt sick. Her casual dinner conversations about court cases, her complaints about prosecutorial strategies, her analysis of judicial precedents, it was all being used to help her family avoid detection. "Michael," she said, keeping her voice steady, "what exactly does Dad's business import these days?" Her brother's eyes sharpened, and Kate saw the moment he decided how much truth to reveal. "Electronics, mostly. Some textiles. The Asian markets are complicated. Lots of paperwork, lots of relationships to maintain. Relationships like David's family. David's father has excellent connections in Vancouver. It's a natural partnership." Kate nodded, as if this made perfect sense. But her mind was racing. Vancouver was a major port for drug trafficking from Asia. Electronics imports provided perfect cover for smuggling operations. Containers full of legitimate goods with hidden compartments. Invoices that could be manipulated. Customs officials who might be compromised. Torres's voice whispered. "Good. Keep him talking about David's father." "I'd love to meet David's parents," Kate said. "Are they here tonight?" Michael's expression grew guarded. "Liu Wei-Wang is traditional. He doesn't attend social functions. But he sends his regards." Kate remembered Torres mentioning Liu Wei-Wang, the head of a money laundering network spanning multiple countries. Traditional wasn't the word she'd used to describe someone the FBI considered a major criminal target. "Maybe at the wedding?" Kate suggested. "Maybe." Michael's tone suggested the topic was closed. He glanced around the room, then leaned closer. "Katie, I need to ask you something. Have you noticed anyone unusual around your courthouse lately? New security? Unfamiliar faces?" Kate's blood ran cold. Were they monitoring her workplace too? "Why would you ask that?" "Dad worries about your safety. Federal judges can be targets, you know. He just wants to make sure you're being careful." The lie was smooth, practiced, but Kate could see the real concern beneath it. They were worried about federal surveillance, about the investigation closing in, and they were using their worry for her safety as cover for their own paranoia. "I'm careful," Kate said. "The courthouse has good security." Michael nodded, but she could see him filing away her response. Everything she said would be reported back to their father, analyzed for signs of federal interest in their operations. "Good," Michael said. "Dad would be devastated if anything happened to you." The sincerity in his voice made Kate's chest tighten. Her brother genuinely cared about her safety, while simultaneously using her position to protect criminals. The contradiction was devastating. "I should find Sarah," Kate said, needing to escape before her composure cracked. "She's in the study with Mom, going over seating charts for the wedding." Michael's smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She's been stressed about the details." Kate made her way toward the study, passing clusters of guests who fell silent as she approached. The weight of their attention felt different now. Not respect for her judicial position, but assessment of a potential threat to their operations. The study door was partially open, and Kate could hear her mother's voice inside, speaking in rapid Mandarin. Kate paused, pressing herself against the wall, grateful for those childhood Saturday language classes she'd complained about. "The transfers must be completed tonight," Linda was saying. "David's people leave tomorrow." "I know, Mama," Sarah replied, her voice tight with stress. "The accounts are ready. But I'm worried about Kate. She's been asking questions." Kate's heart hammered as she strained to hear more. "Kate suspects nothing," Linda said firmly. "She's too focused on her precious career to notice family business. Besides, her presence here tonight provides perfect cover. Who would suspect illegal activity at a federal judge's family celebration?" The casual dismissal hurt more than Kate expected. But worse was the confirmation of Torres's revelation. Kate's presence, her reputation, was being deliberately exploited. "What if she finds out?" Sarah asked. "She won't," Linda replied. "And if she did, what could she do? Destroy her own family? Kate's too soft for that. She always has been." Kate closed her eyes, fighting back tears. Her family's assessment of her character was being used to plan criminal activity. They were so certain of her loyalty, her weakness, that they felt safe operating around her. "The FBI agent is still outside," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Kate's blood froze. They knew about Torres. David's security identified her an hour ago. Linda continued calmly. "Rebecca Torres, Financial Crimes Unit. She's been watching the house for weeks." Kate felt the world tilt. If they knew about Torres, did they know about the wire? About her cooperation? "Should we call it off?" Sarah asked. "No, we proceed as planned. The agent's presence actually helps us. It proves we have nothing to hide. After all, would we really conduct illegal business with an FBI agent watching?" Kate realized with sick certainty that her family was using Torres's surveillance as cover, just as they used Kate's reputation. They were operating under the assumption that their brazenness provided protection. "Besides," Linda added, "if Agent Torres had real evidence, she would have obtained warrants already. She's fishing. As long as we're careful, she'll find nothing." Kate backed away from the study, her mind reeling. Her family knew they were being investigated, knew Torres was outside, but felt confident enough to proceed anyway. The arrogance was staggering and potentially catastrophic. Torres's voice crackled in her ear. "Kate, your vitals are spiking. Are you okay?" Kate found a bathroom and locked the door, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back appeared calm, composed, the perfect federal judge. But inside, Kate was fracturing. "They know you're here," she whispered to the mirror, knowing Torres would hear. "They've known for weeks, and they're proceeding anyway because they think their cover is perfect." "Did they mention you specifically?" Kate closed her eyes. "They think I'm too weak to betray family, too soft to choose justice over loyalty." A long pause then. "Are they right?" Kate looked at herself again, really looked. The wire was invisible, the earpiece undetectable. She appeared to be exactly what her family believed, a naive idealist who could be manipulated through love and guilt. But appearances, as Kate was learning, could be devastatingly deceptive. "No," she whispered. "They're not right." She unlocked the bathroom door and stepped back into the party, back into her double life. Her family's assessment of her character would be their downfall. They were so certain of her weakness that they'd never see her strength coming. The next few hours would determine whether Judge Kate Matthew was the soft, loyal daughter her family believed her to be, or the instrument of justice she'd sworn to become. Either way, by morning, nothing would ever be the same. Kate returned to the party with renewed determination, but her newfound resolve was immediately tested. David Wong stood near the conservatory doors, his polished smile fixed on her as she approached. "Judge Matthew," he said, extending his hand. "We finally meet properly." His handshake lingered too long, his eyes searching her face with uncomfortable intensity. The confrontation Kate had been dreading finally erupted 3 days later, not in the elegant setting of the engagement party, but in the harsh, fluorescent lighting of her childhood kitchen. Sarah stood by the sink, her arms crossed, her face twisted with an anger that had been building for years. "You think you're so much better than us, don't you?" Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. Little Katie, the perfect daughter, the federal judge who's too good for family business. Kate had returned to collect some documents from her old room, evidence Torres needed to build their case. But Sarah had been waiting, her suspicions finally crystallizing into accusation. "I don't think I'm better than anyone," Kate said carefully, acutely aware of the wire still taped to her skin. Every family conversation now served two masters. "Liar." Sarah's eyes blazed. "You've always looked down on us. Dad builds an empire from nothing, sacrifices everything for his children, and you act like his success embarrasses you." The word empire hung in the air like a confession. Kate could practically hear Torres taking notes from whatever surveillance van she was monitoring from. "Sarah, what's really going on? This isn't about the engagement party." "Isn't it?" Sarah stepped closer, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper. "You couldn't even pretend to be happy for me. One night, Katie. I asked you for one night where everything could be about me instead of your precious career." Kate felt the familiar guilt her sister had always been so skilled at wielding. But now she could see the manipulation beneath the pain, the way Sarah used emotion as a weapon. "I was happy for you," Kate said. "But Sarah, some of those people at the party, they weren't wedding guests." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "God, you really are clueless, aren't you? You sit in your courtroom all day, judging people you don't understand, making decisions about lives you've never lived. What's that supposed to mean? It means that while you were playing dress-up in your judge's robes, some of us were dealing with reality. Do you think Dad's business runs itself? Do you think the money for your fancy law school just materialized out of thin air?" The admission was more direct than anything Kate had captured on tape so far. She pressed carefully. "What money, Sarah? What are you talking about?" Sarah's face flushed with rage. "Don't play dumb with me. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've always known, you just chose to look the other way because it was convenient." "I don't know what you mean. Bullshit." Sarah slammed her hand against the counter. "You knew Dad wasn't making enough from legitimate imports to pay for everything. You knew the numbers didn't add up. But you took the money anyway, didn't you? The tuition payments, the apartment deposit, the car down payment when you graduated law school." Kate's stomach churned as Sarah laid out the evidence of her unwitting complicity. Every detail would be devastating in Torres's report. "Sarah, if Dad was involved in something illegal..." "If?" Sarah's voice rose dangerously. "There's no if about it, Katie. Dad has been washing money for 20 years. Michael runs the logistics. Mom keeps the books. And you've been our insurance policy, sitting up there on your federal bench, making us all look legitimate." The kitchen door opened, and their mother appeared, her face pale with alarm. Linda Chen had clearly been listening from the hallway. "Sarah, enough," Linda said sharply. "No, Mama, she needs to hear this." She needs to understand what her family has sacrificed for her success. Linda's eyes darted to Kate, and in that moment, Kate saw her mother's intelligence fully revealed. This wasn't the traditional immigrant housewife Kate had always believed her to be. This was a woman who had been calculating angles and managing risks for decades. "Kate, dear," Linda said, her voice carefully controlled, "your sister is upset. The wedding planning has been stressful." "Don't protect her anymore," Sarah snapped. "She's not a child. She's a federal judge who's been living off drug money for 10 years. The words hit Kate like physical blows. Drug money. Not just money laundering, but narcotics trafficking. The wire against her skin felt like it was burning. "Sarah," Linda warned. "What, Mama? What are you afraid of? That precious Katie might finally have to face the truth about where her perfect life came from?" Kate found her voice. "What truth, Sarah? What are you trying to tell me?" Sarah laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "I'm trying to tell you that while you were in law school, learning about justice and ethics, our family was washing money for the Sinaloa cartel. I'm trying to tell you that your judicial appointment was bought and paid for with blood money." Kate's knees nearly buckled. The Sinaloa cartel, one of the most violent drug trafficking organizations in the world. She'd seen their cases in federal court, had sentenced their low-level operators to decades in prison. And her family had been working with them. "That's enough." Linda's voice cracked like a whip. "Sarah, go to your room. Now. I'm not 12 anymore, Mama. And she's not the perfect daughter you pretend she is." But Linda's attention had shifted to Kate, her expression calculating. "Kate, what have you been doing the last few days? Since the party?" Kate felt Torres's training kick in. "Stay calm. Don't reveal knowledge you shouldn't have." "Working. I had cases to review." "Which cases?" The question was sharp, focused. Kate realized her mother was testing her, looking for signs of federal interest in their operations. Financial crimes, mostly. Money laundering cases. Linda's eyes narrowed. "Anything involving our community?" Kate understood that community meant the criminal network her family operated within. "I can't discuss active cases, Mom." "Of course not," Linda said, but her tone suggested she was drawing her own conclusions. "Kate, I need you to understand something. Family comes first. Always. Before career, before principles, before everything else." "I know that, Mom." "Do you?" Linda stepped closer. "Because there are people who would hurt us, hurt you, if they thought our family wasn't united. If they thought someone might betray us." The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Kate's cooperation with Torres hadn't just put her in danger, it had put her entire family at risk from their criminal associates. "Mom, I would never." "Wouldn't you?" Sarah interjected. "Wouldn't you sacrifice family for your precious sense of justice? Isn't that what makes you feel superior to the rest of us?" Kate looked between her mother and sister, seeing them clearly for the first time. Sarah's resentment wasn't just sibling rivalry. It was the anger of someone who'd been forced into criminal activity while watching Kate benefit from its proceeds without consequences. Linda's protective instincts weren't just maternal. They were the calculations of a criminal who'd spent decades evading law enforcement. "Where's Michael?" Kate asked. "Why?" Linda's voice was sharp. I want to talk to him." "Michael is handling business for your father," Linda said. "Important business that requires his full attention." Kate understood. Michael was probably moving assets, destroying evidence, preparing for the possibility that the FBI investigation was closer than they'd believed. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Kate stood between her mother and sister, feeling the weight of the wire against her skin, knowing that every word of this conversation was being recorded. Her family's confessions would be used to prosecute them, to destroy the people who had raised and loved her. But she also understood now that her family's love had come with a price. Complicity in crimes that had funded violence and addiction across multiple countries. Her success, her integrity, her judicial position, all of it built on a foundation of blood money. "I need to go," Kate said finally. "Kate." Linda's voice stopped her at the kitchen door. Remember what I said about family coming first? Remember that some choices can't be undone. Kate met her mother's eyes, seeing the intelligence there, the calculation, the love twisted by years of criminal activity. I'll remember, Mom. She left the house feeling like she was walking away from her own grave. The wire had captured everything. Sarah's admissions about drug money, Linda's threats, the confirmation that their family had been working with the Sinaloa cartel for years. Torres was waiting in the surveillance van 3 blocks away, her expression grim as Kate climbed into the passenger seat. "Did you get all of that?" Kate asked. "Every word." Torres pulled out her earpiece. "Kate, I need you to understand what you've just done. That recording. It's enough to bring down your entire family." Kate nodded, feeling empty inside. "I know. Are you ready for what comes next?" Kate thought about Sarah's anger, about her mother's threats, about Michael handling business for their father. She thought about the victims of Sinaloa cartel violence, about the families destroyed by the drugs her family's money had helped distribute. "I'm ready," she said. But as Torres drove away from the neighborhood where Kate had grown up, Kate wondered if anyone could ever really be ready to destroy everything they'd once called home. The recording would be transcribed, analyzed, and used to obtain arrest warrants. Within days, federal agents would be knocking on her family's door, and Kate Matthew would become the daughter who chose justice over blood. The only question now was whether she could live with that choice. Kate sat in her federal chambers at 2:47 a.m., staring at the warrant applications spread across her mahogany desk. The irony wasn't lost on her. Tomorrow morning, she would likely be signing arrest warrants for financial crimes cases, while federal agents prepared to arrest her own family for identical charges. Her phone buzzed. Torres. The timeline has accelerated. The agent's voice was tight with urgency. David Wong moved up his departure. His flight leaves for Vancouver in 6 hours. Not tomorrow evening. Kate's blood chilled. What does that mean? It means we arrest everyone tonight. Or we lose them. Your father's organization will scatter to the wind, and years of investigation die with them. Kate closed her eyes, feeling the weight of inevitability settling around her like a shroud. How long do I have? Federal teams are mobilizing now. We'll have your family in custody within 2 hours. 2 hours. Kate looked around her chambers. The law books, the certificates on the wall, the photo of her swearing-in ceremony where her parents had beamed with pride. In 2 hours, that photo would become evidence of how thoroughly her family had manipulated her success for their criminal enterprise. "Kate, there's something else." Torres's voice carried a new tension. "We intercepted communications indicating your family knows about your cooperation." The words hit Kate like ice water. "They know? Michael discovered surveillance equipment in your father's office. They're putting the pieces together. Kate, you're in immediate danger." Kate's hands trembled as she processed this information. Her family, the people who had raised her, protected her, loved her, now saw her as a threat to be eliminated. "What do I do?" "Get out of there. Now. Don't go home, don't go anywhere they might expect. We'll have agents to you within 20 minutes. Kate gathered the warrant applications with shaking hands. As she reached for her car keys, her office door opened. Michael stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Working late?" he asked, but his tone carried no warmth. Kate's training kicked in. "Stay calm. Don't reveal knowledge you shouldn't have." "Emergency motions," she said. "You know how it is." Michael stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. "Do I? I'm not sure I know anything anymore, Katie." The use of her childhood nickname felt like a weapon now. Kate could see the pain in her brother's eyes. Not just anger, but genuine heartbreak. "Michael, Dad sent me to bring you home," he said quietly. "He wants to talk to you, as a family." Kate understood that talk likely meant something very different from a family conversation. "It's late. Can't it wait until tomorrow?" "No," Michael said, his voice hardening. "It can't wait. Too much has already been said. Too much has already been recorded." The admission hung between them like a confession. Michael knew about the wire, About her cooperation with Torres, he knew, and he'd come to bring her home anyway. Kate realized she was standing at the final crossroads of her life. In one direction lay her family, the people who had shaped her, loved her, and ultimately betrayed everything she stood for. In the other direction lay justice, cold, impartial, and devastating to everything she had once held dear. Her choice would determine not just her survival, but her soul. Kate stared at her brother across the dim expanse of her chambers, the silence stretching between them like a chasm that had taken 32 years to fully reveal itself. Michael's hand rested casually on the door handle, but his posture was that of someone prepared to prevent her from leaving. "You know," Kate said quietly, "don't you?" Michael's laugh was bitter. "Know what, Katie? That my little sister, the federal judge, has been wearing a wire to family dinners. That she's been recording our conversations for the FBI?" His voice cracked slightly. "Yeah, I know." Kate felt something break inside her chest. Not surprise. She'd known this moment would come. But the finality of it, the end of any pretense that this could somehow work out differently. "How long have you known?" "Dad figured it out 2 days ago. The way you were asking questions, the timing of your visits, the fact that Agent Torres has been watching us for weeks." Michael stepped closer, his face etched with pain. "What we couldn't figure out was why. Why would you destroy us, Katie, after everything we've done for you?" Kate's phone buzzed against her hip. Torres, probably wondering why she hadn't left yet. She ignored it. "After everything you've done for me?" Kate's voice carried decades of suppressed realization. "You mean after you built my entire life on blood money? After you used my judicial position to legitimize drug trafficking?" "We protected you!" Michael's composure cracked. "Do you think it was easy? Keeping you clean while building something that could provide for all of us? Dad could have brought you in years ago, made you a real part of the operation. But he didn't, because he wanted you to have a choice." "A choice?" Kate's laugh was hollow. "What choice did I have when my law school was paid for with cartel money? When my judicial appointment was bought with drug proceeds? When was I supposed to choose, Michael? When I was 12 and didn't understand why Dad worked such long hours? When I was 16 and noticed we suddenly had more money than our neighbors?" Michael's face flushed with anger. "You had a choice every time you cashed a check. Every time you accepted help with your apartment, your car, your career. You had a choice every time you enjoyed the benefits of our success without asking too many questions." The accusation hit like a physical blow because Kate knew it contained truth. She had chosen willful ignorance, had chosen to believe her family's success was legitimate because believing otherwise would have been too painful. "You're right," she said quietly. "I did make choices. I chose to believe in you, to trust that the people who loved me wouldn't build my life on other people's suffering. But Michael, I've seen what cartel money does. I've sentenced kids to decades in prison for selling the drugs your network helped distribute. I've looked at grieving mothers whose children overdosed on heroin that was smuggled using Dad's routes." Michael's expression hardened. "Those people made their choices too, Katie. We didn't force anyone to buy drugs. We didn't force anyone to get addicted. You enabled it. You profited from it. And you used me to make it all look legitimate." Her phone buzzed again, more insistently. Michael's eyes flicked to her hip, then back to her face. "Answer it," he said. Kate hesitated, then pulled out the phone. Torres's number flashed on the screen. "Go ahead," Michael said. "Tell Agent Torres that you're having a family meeting. Tell her you'll call her back." Kate stared at the phone, understanding that answering it would confirm Michael's suspicions about her cooperation. Not answering it would signal Torres that she was in danger, potentially accelerating the timeline for arrests. She declined the call. "Good choice," Michael said. "Dad wants to see you, Katie. One last family meeting before—" His voice trailed off. "Before what?" "Before everything changes. Before we all have to live with the choices we've made." Kate understood the subtext. Before federal agents kicked down doors and shattered her family forever. Before Michael and her parents spent the rest of their lives in federal prison. Before Kate became the daughter who chose justice over blood. "What if I said no?" Kate asked. What if I refuse to come? Michael's expression grew pained. Dad was very clear about that. You come willingly, or you come anyway. But you come. The threat was gentle but unmistakable. Kate realized her family had moved past hoping for her loyalty and into damage control mode. She was now a liability to be managed, not a daughter to be protected. And if I come, what then? Dad wants to explain. He wants you to understand why we did what we did. Maybe we can find a way through this that doesn't destroy everyone. Kate knew there was no way through this that preserved her family. The recordings Torres had were devastating, the evidence overwhelming. Her cooperation had ensured that federal prosecutors could dismantle the entire network. But she also knew that refusing Michael's request would likely mean she never saw her family again except through prison glass. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Michael gestured for her to check it. Torres, federal teams moving in 90 minutes. Get out now. Michael read the message over her shoulder, his face going pale. 90 minutes, he repeated quietly. Jesus, Katie, 90 minutes. Michael, no. His voice was sharp, decisive. We're going. Now. Dad needs to know the timeline. Kate felt the trap closing completely around her. Torres expected her to run, to let federal agents handle the arrests while she waited in protective custody. But Michael was demanding she return to the family that now saw her as an existential threat. Either choice would define not just her immediate survival but who she was fundamentally. If I go with you, Kate said, am I coming back? Michael's silence was answer enough. Kate looked around her chambers one final time, at the law books that had shaped her understanding of justice, at the certificates that represented her life's work, at the photo of her swearing-in ceremony where she'd promised to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The oath hadn't mentioned what to do when the enemies turned out to be the people you loved most. Okay, she said quietly. Let's go home. Michael's relief was visible, but it was tinged with something that looked like grief. They both understood that Kate Matthew, federal judge and dutiful daughter, was about to disappear forever. Whatever emerged from the next 90 minutes would be something entirely different. As they walked through the darkened courthouse corridors, Kate's phone buzzed repeatedly with calls from Torres. Each ignored call felt like another bridge burning behind her. Michael led her to his car, a black Mercedes that Kate now realized had been purchased with laundered money. Everything in her life, every symbol of success and legitimacy, was tainted by association with crimes she'd never fully acknowledged. Katie, Michael said as he started the engine, I want you to know that I never wanted it to come to this. When Dad brought me into the business, he said it was temporary, just until we had enough legitimate income to go clean. But you never did go clean. We never did. The money was too good, the network too valuable, and then you became a judge. And suddenly we weren't just criminals anymore. We were a criminal enterprise with a federal judge in the family. The protection that provided, it was intoxicating. Kate stared out the passenger window at the familiar streets of her childhood, understanding that she was seeing them for the last time as Henry Chen's daughter. In 90 minutes, federal agents would transform her from family member to key witness in their prosecution. Michael, what's going to happen when we get home? Her brother was quiet for a long moment. Dad will try to convince you to run with us. He's got contingency plans, new identities, offshore accounts, safe houses in countries without extradition treaties. And if I refuse? Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Dad loves you, Katie, but he loves this family's survival more. And right now, you're the biggest threat to that survival. Kate closed her eyes, understanding that she was driving toward a confrontation that would force her to choose not just between family and justice, but between loyalty and survival. Her cooperation with Torres had set events in motion that couldn't be stopped, but her family's response to that cooperation remained a terrifying unknown. As they pulled into the driveway of the house where she'd grown up, Kate saw additional cars parked outside. vehicles she didn't recognize belonging to people who were probably armed and definitely desperate. 90 minutes until federal agents arrived. 90 minutes to determine whether Kate Matthew would survive her choice to become an FBI informant. The house looked exactly as it had during Sarah's engagement party. Elegant, welcoming, the perfect symbol of immigrant success. But now Kate could see it for what it truly was. The headquarters of a criminal enterprise that had used her love and trust to build an empire of violence and addiction. Michael turned off the engine, and in the sudden silence, Kate could hear her heart beating like a countdown timer. "Ready?" Michael asked. Kate looked at the house where she'd learned to walk, to read, to believe in justice and family loyalty. In a few minutes, she would discover whether those two values could coexist, or if choosing one meant destroying the other forever. "I'm ready," she said, though she knew that nothing could truly prepare her for what was waiting inside. The final act of her double life was about to begin. The house felt different as Kate stepped through the front door, charged with the electric tension of desperation and finality. The elegant foyer where she'd been welcomed to Sarah's engagement party now felt like a stage set for a tragedy that had been 20 years in the making. Her father stood in the living room, no longer the distinguished businessman she'd always known. Henry Chen looked older, diminished by the weight of impending collapse. Sarah sat on the couch, her face streaked with tears, while their mother paced near the windows with the restless energy of a caged animal. "Katie," her father said, his voice carrying a weariness she'd never heard before, "thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" Kate asked, her eyes taking in the room's other occupants. Two men she didn't recognize, their suits expensive, but their faces hard with the kind of calculation that spoke of violence as a business tool. "There are always choices," Henry said. "Even now." Kate's phone had stopped buzzing. Torres would know by now that something had gone wrong, that Kate was no longer following the extraction protocol. Federal teams were probably already moving into position around the house. "Dad, I need you to understand something," Kate said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The FBI has everything. The recordings, the financial records, evidence of the cartel connections. This is over." Henry's face showed no surprise. "I know what they have. The question is what happens next." One of the unfamiliar men stepped forward, tall, silver-haired, with eyes that had seen too much violence. "Judge Matthew, I'm Vincent Caruso. I work with your father's business associates." Kate recognized the name from FBI briefings. Vincent Caruso, suspected head of a New Jersey crime family with connections to money laundering operations across the eastern seaboard. "Mr. Caruso," Kate said carefully, "whatever you're planning." "What I'm planning," Caruso interrupted, "depends entirely on you. Your cooperation with federal law enforcement has created complications for a lot of people." The threat was unmistakable. Kate wasn't just dealing with her family's reaction to her betrayal. She was facing the wrath of an entire criminal network that her recordings had exposed. "The way I see it," Caruso continued, "you have two options. Option 1, you disappear. Tonight. New identity, new life. Somewhere the FBI can't find you. Your family comes with you, and we all start over in a country that doesn't have extradition treaties." Kate looked at her family's faces, seeing a mixture of hope and desperation. Sarah's tears had stopped, replaced by a desperate kind of anticipation. Michael stood by the fireplace, his expression unreadable but his posture tense. "And option 2?" Kate asked, though she dreaded the answer. Caruso's smile was cold. "Option 2 is that you become a liability that needs to be managed permanently." The casual delivery of the death threat sent ice through Kate's veins. But she forced herself to remain calm, to think like a judge analyzing evidence and testimony. "Mr. Caruso, you should know that I'm expected at a federal safe house in 30 minutes. If I don't arrive, Agent Torres will assume I've been compromised." "Agent Torres will assume correctly," Caruso replied. "But her assumptions won't matter if she can't prove anything." Kate felt the trap closing around her completely. But she also realized something that gave her a thread of hope. Caruso was negotiating, not executing. That meant they needed something from her, some cooperation that couldn't be obtained from a corpse. "What exactly do you want from me?" she asked. Her father spoke for the first time since her arrival. "We want you to recant, Katie. Tell the FBI that you were coerced into cooperating, that the recordings were obtained under duress. Claim that your family is innocent, and that Agent Torres pressured you into false statements." Kate stared at her father, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the loving patriarch who'd sacrificed everything for his children's success, but a criminal who'd built an empire on violence and was now asking his daughter to commit perjury to protect it. "You want me to destroy my career, my credibility, everything I've worked for, to save you from the consequences of crimes I never knew you were committing?" "We want you to save your family," Linda said sharply, speaking for the first time since Kate's arrival. "We want you to remember that blood comes before everything else." Kate looked at her mother, the woman who'd helped with homework, attended school plays, celebrated every achievement, and saw a stranger. Someone who could ask her own daughter to commit federal crimes as casually as requesting help with dinner preparation. "Mom, do you understand what you're asking? You want me to lie under oath, to obstruct a federal investigation, to become complicit in money laundering and drug trafficking?" "I want you to be loyal," Linda replied. "The way families should be loyal." Kate felt something break inside her chest. Not her resolve, but her last remaining illusion about who her family really was. They weren't victims of circumstance or criminals with hearts of gold. They were people who would sacrifice her integrity, her career, and her freedom to avoid the consequences of their own choices. "And if I refuse?" Caruso stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Judge Matthew, your cooperation with federal law enforcement has endangered operations worth hundreds of millions of dollars. People have died for less." Kate understood that she was no longer negotiating for her family's freedom. She was negotiating for her own survival. But she also understood something else. The woman who would agree to Caruso's terms was not the same woman who'd taken an oath to uphold justice against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Outside, she could hear the distant sound of vehicles approaching, multiple engines moving fast. Federal backup, arriving exactly as Torres had promised. "It sounds like you're out of time," Kate said quietly. Caruso's hand moved inside his jacket, and Kate saw Michael tense near the fireplace. Her family's living room was about to become a crime scene, one way or another. But Henry Chen raised his hand, stopping whatever Caruso had been planning. "No," he said firmly. "Not here. Not in front of my daughters." For a moment, Kate saw a glimpse of the father she'd always believed him to be, the man who would protect his children even from the consequences of his own criminal choices. The sound of vehicles grew louder, accompanied now by the distinctive whine of police sirens. Red and blue lights began flashing through the windows, casting the living room in an alternating glow of emergency and crisis. "Federal agents!" Torres's voice boomed through a megaphone. "This is the FBI! The house is surrounded!" Kate looked at her family one final time, at Sarah's tear-streaked face, at Michael's conflicted expression, at her parents, mixture of love and criminal desperation. They were the people who'd shaped her, raised her, loved her, in their own twisted way. But they were also the people who'd built her life on blood money, and were now asking her to sacrifice everything she believed in to protect their empire of violence. The front door exploded inward as federal agents stormed into the house, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands. Kate raised her hands instinctively, but her eyes remained locked on her father's face. In that moment, as her family was surrounded by federal agents and her double life finally collapsed completely, Kate Matthew understood that some choices couldn't be undone. She had chosen justice over family loyalty, and now she would have to live with the consequences of that choice forever. The little girl who'd believed her father was a hero was gone. In her place stood a federal judge who'd helped bring down a criminal empire, even though that empire had been built by the people she loved most in the world. As handcuffs clicked around her family's wrists, Kate wondered if the price of justice was always this devastating, or if she'd simply been naive enough to believe that doing the right thing wouldn't destroy everything she'd once held dear. 6 months later, Kate sat in her federal chambers, reviewing case files in the pre-dawn quiet. The courthouse felt different now, Not because anything had physically changed, but because she understood her place in it differently. The certificates on her wall, the law books on her shelves, the very desk where she worked, none of it felt tainted anymore. For the first time since her appointment, Kate's success belonged entirely to her. The trials had concluded 3 weeks ago. Her father received 25 years for money laundering and racketeering. Sarah got 12 years, her cooperation in the final weeks earning her a reduced sentence. Michael's testimony against Caruso and the broader network had secured him 8 years in witness protection. Her mother, Linda, had received 15 years, but would likely serve less with good behavior and continued cooperation. Kate hadn't attended any of the sentencing hearings. Torres had advised against it, citing security concerns and the emotional toll. But the real reason was simpler. Kate wasn't sure she could face seeing her family in orange jumpsuits without breaking down completely. Her phone buzzed with a text from Torres. "Coffee? I have news." They met at their usual spot, a small cafe 3 blocks from the courthouse that served mediocre coffee but offered complete privacy. Torres looked tired but satisfied, the expression of someone who'd closed a major case and was finally getting proper sleep. "How are you holding up?" Torres asked, as she slid into the booth across from Kate. "Some days are better than others." Kate wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, seeking its warmth. "I got a letter from Michael yesterday. From wherever they've relocated him. He's doing well. The information he's provided has helped us dismantle 3 other networks. Your brother probably saved dozens of lives by cooperating." Kate nodded, though the knowledge didn't ease the ache of missing him. Michael had been the one family member who'd shown genuine remorse, who'd understood why Kate had made the choice she did. His final testimony had been devastating to Caruso's organization, but redemptive for his own soul. "What's the news?" Kate asked. Torres pulled out a tablet, scrolling to a news article. Vincent Caruso was found dead in his cell this morning. Apparent suicide. Kate stared at the headline, feeling a complex mixture of relief and sadness. Caruso's death meant one less threat to her safety, but it also represented another life destroyed by the criminal enterprise her family had helped build. Does this change anything for security protocols? Actually, yes. The intelligence services believe Caruso's death eliminates the last significant threat to your safety from the network. We're recommending that you be removed from protective status. Kate felt something shift inside her chest, not quite relief, but a loosening of tension she'd carried for months. The idea of moving through the world without looking over her shoulder, of making plans beyond the next security briefing, felt almost foreign. "There's something else," Torres continued. "The Department of Justice wants to offer you a position, heading up a new task force focused on judicial corruption and family-based criminal enterprises." Quote, Kate considered this, a federal appointment that would use her unique experience to help other judges who might be unwittingly compromised by criminal family members. It was an opportunity to turn her trauma into something constructive, to help prevent other families from facing the choices hers had faced. "I'd report directly to Washington? You'd keep your judicial position but take on additional responsibilities. The task force would operate out of D.C., but you'd maintain chambers here. Best of both worlds." Kate smiled, the first genuine smile she'd managed in months. "I'll consider it." As they finished their coffee, Torres reached across the table and squeezed Kate's hand briefly. "Kate, I want you to know, what you did took more courage than most people possess. You chose justice over everything else, and that choice has saved lives. It destroyed my family." "No," Torres said firmly. "Your family's choices destroyed your family. Your choice saved whatever could be saved." After Torres left, Kate walked slowly back to the courthouse, processing the offer and what it might mean for her future. For the first time since the investigation began, she felt something approaching hope. Her chambers felt different when she returned, not like a refuge from her family's crimes, but like the foundation for whatever came next. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a number she'd been avoiding for weeks. The call was answered on the second ring. "Kate? Hi, Michael." Her brother's voice sounded older, worn by months of testimony and relocation stress. How are you settling in? It's an adjustment. New name, new city, new job. But I'm safe, and I'm clean. Really clean, for the first time in 15 years. They talked for 20 minutes, carefully, knowing their calls were monitored, but with a warmth that had been missing from their relationship for years. Michael had found work as an accountant for a nonprofit organization. He was taking night classes in social work, hoping to help other people transition away from criminal lifestyles. "Kate," he said before they hung up, "I need you to know something. What you did, turning us in, it was the right choice. I hated you for it at first, but now I understand. You saved me from becoming someone I wouldn't have been able to live with." After the call ended, Kate sat in her chambers and cried for the first time since the arrests. Not tears of grief or regret, but tears of release. Her brother's forgiveness, combined with the possibility of meaningful work ahead, felt like the first step toward healing. That evening, Kate drove past her childhood home for the first time since the raids. The house sat empty, a for sale sign planted in the front yard. The FBI had seized it as proceeds of criminal activity, along with most of her family's other assets. Seeing it vacant should have been heartbreaking, but instead, Kate felt a strange sense of closure. The house had been beautiful, but it had been built on suffering. Her family's love had been real, but it had been corrupted by violence and greed. Kate's choice to expose them hadn't been a betrayal of that love. It had been an attempt to separate love from criminality, to save whatever was salvageable from the wreckage of their criminal empire. As she drove away from the empty house, Kate made her decision about the Justice Department offer. She would take the position, would help build systems to prevent other families from facing the impossible choices hers had faced. Judge Kate Matthew had lost her family, but she'd found her purpose. And for the first time in her adult life, her success would be built on a foundation that could bear the weight of her principles. The little girl who'd believed her father was a hero was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who understood that real heroes sometimes had to make devastating choices in service of justice. Kate drove toward her apartment, toward whatever came next, carrying the weight of her choices but no longer crushed by them. She'd chosen justice over family loyalty and had learned to live with the consequences. Some foundations, once shattered, could be rebuilt stronger than before. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Quote,